My name is Jim Stone, and I'm with Jordyn Poulter this morning. Jordyn was a member of the USA Youth National Team last summer, and we're going to talk a little bit about blocking, and specifically we're going to talk about swing blocking, which seems to be the direction that is encouraged a lot, versus just traditional, square up to the net and get your hands over the net type of blocking. So, and we're going to make a case for both, but then encourage people to make some considerations in terms of what they teach, how much time they spend on it, and that type of thing. But my general statement is blocking's done poorly regardless of whether you're swing blocking or facing the net and doing more of a traditional style blocking. And it's done poorly because generally people don't practice it very much. You see a hitting line of 10 people and nobody working on their blocking. So generally it's the last thing people learn how to do. But at the higher levels, it becomes very, very important because the hitters are so good. So we're going to work on a couple things. We'll go to the chalkboard and maybe make some comparisons between swing blocking and the traditional style blocking, and then have Jordyn do some drills to work on some of the blocking skills. So that's the agenda for this morning, and we'll go from there. Okay, so Jordyn's going to spend just a second kind of demonstrating some swing blocking skills. So as you see, as she moves to her right, she'll step, cross over, her hips turn away from the net, and then the effort's made to square back up to the net and have both hands over the net as the ball's being hit. So we'll talk about the pluses and minuses of that here in a second. What we see a lot, and Jordyn, you can hold up here for a second, what we see a lot in club tournaments is the more traditional type of blocking where somebody will stand at towards the antenna, face the net, square up, and then, go ahead Jordyn, and then do more of a traditional, just jump straight up and over. Okay, so when we talk about traditional blocking, that's more of what we're talking about. Versus swing blocking. So we're going to go to the chalkboard here and talk a little bit more about both and advantages and disadvantages and maybe a direction you might want to pursue. All right, like we said, I think there's a real push in our country that everybody needs to be swing blocking, and I think that's a mistake. I'm okay with swing blocking when it's done well, but as you can see when Jordyn was demonstrating swing blocking, there's a lot more movement involved, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of timing, and it's something that I think you can do at higher levels, but the players actually of any age that don't practice very much, or younger players, there's a real case to be made for just facing the net and doing a good job of blocking. So I wrote down a couple things that we want to go over. First of all, to me, blocking is blocking. There's no right way, wrong way. You want to get over the net, you want to be aggressive, and you want to stuff the ball. However you do that is fine, but we don't want to get to the point where I'm blocking only if I swing block. So that's kind of the big picture. As we look at swing blocking, as you can see, there's a lot of rotation involved, and I think the mistake that sometimes players make is they over-rotate, and they don't have both hands over the net when the ball's being hit, and that's a problem. So there's some rotation involved that could be considered a negative versus traditional blocking. Your hips are always square to the net, and I think that's an easier, simpler move that would be beneficial to younger players or to inexperienced blockers. A case might be made for jumping a little higher when you're using your arms to jump in swing blocking. I think you can use your arms more than most players do if they're just blocking traditionally. The typical hands at the ears and kind of drop down, and you're not using your arms at all. So we'll have Jordyn go over some things where we encourage arm use even though you're blocking in the traditional manner. A case can be made for swing blocking. You have more range. I can start in the middle of the court and maybe help out with blocking the middle third of the court and still get to the antenna. I'm not sure you sacrifice that tremendously if you keep your hips square to the net. You just have to have proper footwork. Some coaches say that swing blocking teaches you to be more aggressive. I don't think there's any correlation for that. I think you can be aggressive just by standing, facing the net, and getting over and stuff blocking the ball. So the point being, there is no right or wrong. There's not a good right way, wrong way, good way, bad way. Both can be done effectively if you do it properly. So, takeaway from this, swing versus traditional blocking, both are okay. A lot of it depends on the situation or the types of teams that you play. If the case is going to be, we're going to swing block and start our outside blockers in to help out with the middle attack, when there's no middle attack coming from the other side, I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish is relevant to what's going on the other side of the net, so you might want to start your blockers out a little bit. Good players can do both, because there's situations that will mandate that you be very comfortable shuffle stepping along the net and blocking or swing blocking. So to do one or the other exclusively, I think is not good. It's something that you want your players to be comfortable with doing both. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, both are being done poorly because we don't practice blocking very much. We don't practice the mechanics involved in blocking. So the purpose of this video is to show you some things that you might spend some time on in practice that will encourage good blocking mechanics generally. And mostly what we're going to focus on is just traditional face the net blocking and how we can get people doing that better and more athletic and more aggressive, and see if we can make a little progress in that skill. Okay, the first concept needs to be, and again, regardless of having swing blocking or blocking in a more traditional manner, is the good blockers, they block with their core, they block with their shoulders and back. So it's a motion, as Jordyn will demonstrate, where she'll roll her shoulders forward, okay, or both at the same time. This is the motion you want, but too often blocking is done with relaxed arms and kind of an elbow snap and soft hands, soft wrists. So a drill we do to kind of incorporate the core and the shoulders is we'll have players start in a good blocking position, elbows are locked out, and as I touch their hand, they'll roll their shoulder forward. So they have to kind of react, and sometimes it's both. And again, this is a warm-up drill, but it encourages players to get this motion as they're blocking. Players will get sloppy with it, and they'll start bending their elbows, and they'll have soft hands. So you really have to encourage them to have hard hands, lock their elbows out, and everything comes from the shoulder and the core. So we do this a lot when we're just warming up as part of our warm-up routine. One of the keys to blocking is not standing in this Mickey Mouse position and doing this as we jump. We want to incorporate our arms in the jumping action, and a lot of players have trouble with that. So we want to get where they're comfortable using their shoulders and arms. So one of the things we do is we'll start, again, this is a warm-up thing where we'll start people going, you know, just relaxing arms in a running fashion, then we'll go faster, and then we'll go faster. Okay, and then slower, and then faster. So the point being, you can stop. the point being is we want players to relax in their shoulders, and we want them, you know, and this certainly has some crossover to hitting approaches as well, in terms of being able to do this as we're jumping, you know, as opposed to other things. We dovetail on that same type of motion, but we're going to go both hands. Okay, so we'll hear nice big arm swing, and we'll be relaxed, and we'll be relaxed, and we'll go faster, we'll bend our knees a little bit. So now as arms come up, we kind of raise our legs up too. So we're getting that motion down. Okay, so again, these are warm-up activities that I think will have some crossover to the actual blocking motion. Okay, another drill that we do, again, as part of warm-up, and this is to incorporate the arms into more of a driving dynamic action. Go ahead, Jordyn. Is we'll start on a mat, and we'll use our arms to really drive our bodies up in the air, and we'll land on our feet. Now, a safety part of this, go ahead and get back down, is you want to make sure when you get to the top, just stop. Is here, stop. Make sure we don't let the hips drop below 90 degrees. Okay, so, you know, that's kind of a safety thing. So as Jordyn does this, you'll see how she drives her arms up, pops to her feet, but she never gets lower than 90 degrees where her hips are below her knees. One more, Jordyn. So you can do, depending on your team, 5 or 10 of these. Again, it's part of your warm-up routine. This next activity is, go ahead, Jordyn, is to start working on the blocking mechanics. And as we mentioned earlier, Good blockers use their core and their shoulders more than their hands and their wrists. So this is a warm-up activity where the ball starts in front of her at chest level. She'll drop her hips and knees, extend the ball up in a blocking motion. And then as you notice at the top, she'll pull down with her core, roll her shoulders forward, and then just snap her wrists down as she releases the ball. A mistake that a lot of players will make, go ahead, is they'll get in this position, okay, and then when they come up, they tend to get the ball back behind them, and you really don't want that. So the ball starts in front. As she extends up, it stays in front, and then it's core, wrist snap as she executes the drill. Okay, one or two more. So she drives her core down and rolls her shoulders forward at the same time. Good. Okay. All right, so we're at the net now, and I think one of the downsides of just a traditional blocking is how players start. And you see a lot of this stuff where they start and their palms are to the net and their hands are fairly high. And I'm not sure why we do that, because it promotes kind of this arm action where it's very, what's the right word, not dynamic. Okay, so rather than starting in this position, we want to drop the hands a little bit, kind of get our forearms parallel with the ground, drop our hips some, and just get in a little bit more athletic posture. So from this position, she can certainly move laterally better, quickly, and it also is in a position where she can now use her arms to help her jump. Okay, so this is the motion we want when we're just traditional blocking, our hips are facing the net, in terms of starting with our hands a little bit lower. So she starts in this position, and then from there, as the ball is set, she'll go ahead and get to the point of attack, keep her elbows bent so there's a short arc, and then drive up and over the net. When we say short arc, it means her elbows stay bent. If it gets into a long arc, you don't have to jump, but go ahead and use your arms. She gets this going on. So elbows stay relaxed and bent. As soon as her hands get to the top of the net, she extends over the net. And again, even when we're going without a ball, we want to pull the core in and roll the shoulders over and make sure we're practicing good technique. So same skill, different angle. Notice how her forearms start parallel with the net, drops her hips a little bit, knees are bent, and then she extends up and over. So Jordyn, hold up just a second. So now we're going to have her shuffle step, one step to the right, one step to the left, go through the same mechanics. So, we can still go ahead. We can still move and not change how we're performing the skill. So blocking doesn't have to be a static activity. It's a movement activity. And so notice, and we're starting to get towards footwork and expanding our range of coverage, where as she moves, she brings her arms back, and Jordyn, this time, why don't you stop right when you're ready to jump, just freeze. So notice how when she gets to the point of attack, her arms are already back, and that's the thing that we want players to get really good at, is moving while there are, so there's two motions going on at the same time. Her feet are moving laterally while her arms are coming back. And again, we want to make sure we keep our arc fairly short. So we don't want to get back and extend our arms. So the arc stays short as she moves. So go a couple. And notice the arm movement, how she coordinates her upper body and lower body. Okay. So we do a lot of activities that coordinate the upper body and lower body. And that's a real problem with a lot of players in general, but certainly especially younger players, where they tend to do one thing with their lower body and their upper body stays static, or vice versa. So we try to do a lot of activities where they're having to move their lower body while their upper body is doing something, and then they start getting a sense of the two parts working together. So as you can see when Jordyn was demoing here, how her feet were moving laterally while her arms were coming back. And I think that's something you incorporate in a warm-up every day, is to get this motion where the legs are extending and the arms are extending at the same time. One of the key components of blocking is to make sure you're putting yourself in the angle of the approach. Most hitters, certainly through club, and arguably you can say through college, they'll hit the way they approach and they'll hit the way they're facing. So what the blocker has to do is move to line up with that angle of approach. And again, this is a difference between swing blocking and the traditional blocking. Is so often in swing blocking, you'll see the ball is set, and then the players just kind of randomly take a crossover step and get in the air, and they don't really put themselves in the angle of approach. I think it's easier to put yourself in the proper approach if you're just shuffle stepping. Again, this is kind of the advantage of the traditional face the net, move along the net versus opening your hips up, is it's easier to put yourself into that angle approach. So a very simple drill that we do without a ball is the attacker will just take some approaches, and then it's up to the blocker to line up with the approach. So we're trying to build that the blocker takes their eye off the ball, lines up with the hitter. And the analogy that we use, which will make sense to kids who have played basketball, if you haven't played basketball, maybe not so much sense, is you want to draw a charging foul. So as I approach, I want to make sure as a blocker, if I kept going, I would run right into her. I use the term, the hitter's running by you a lot in practice. And by that I mean, as the hitter approaches, the blocker positions themselves poorly, where if I kept going, I would run right by her. Generally, that's where the ball is going to get hit. So we want the blocker to do what we call front the hitter. Front the hitter's approach. So as I approach, the approach takes me in, she will front my approach, and that's where she stations herself. Now maybe the hitter does that, maybe the hitter does that. That's okay. But they're not going to run by me, hit the ball straight ahead, and score. One of the rationale for swing blocking and using a crossover step is you start in the middle of the court or towards the middle third of the court. You can help out the middle blocker with any sort of attack coming out of the middle third of the court, being a middle hitter or a back row hitter, and still get to the pin. I don't think it has to be, in order to do that, we have to swing block. You can still face the net, help out with the middle, get to the outside without turning your hips away from the net. But you have to have good footwork. So as Jordyn goes through this, you'll see all it is a step, go do a couple. It's a step, shuffle step, or step hop. Okay? And notice how she incorporates her arms. And again, Jordyn, when your feet hit out here, just freeze, don't jump. So she steps, and as she lands, she kind of went by me a little bit. As she lands, her arms are already back. So go again and just freeze. Her arms are already back, getting ready to initiate the jumping action. So again, it goes back to kind of what we were working on earlier in terms of the lower body and upper body working together. But as you can see, Jordyn you don't go quite that far. So like zone 3, yeah. Jordyn can still help out with a middle attack, a 31. Or if she starts there, she can still step to her left. That's okay. She can still step to her left and help out blocking a back row attack. So she can still start here, step hop, get to the outside, and put up a good block. Now, dovetailing on that same concept, as soon as the ball goes to the outside, with her eyes, she'll do what she just got through practicing in terms of she will line up with my approach wherever that takes her. And I think, again, for younger players, especially, but players of all ages, you see international players that never turn their hips away from the net. All they do is shuffle step along the net. They'll step hop, as Jordyn was just demonstrating, where their hips always stay square, and there's a lot to be said for less movement is more effective. Okay, since we don't have a hitter here, I'll do my pale imitation of an attacker. So I'm going to just toss, hit the ball into Jordyn's hands, and we want you to focus on just the blocking mechanics. So she starts her arms parallel, forearms parallel with the floor, and then extends over the net, uses her core and upper body, and reaches, we use the term a lot, reach to the back line. So she's not reaching to the ceiling, she's rolling her shoulders forward, and she reaches to the back line. Very good. So now we're going to rehearse her starting pinched in to help out with the middle attack, and then using proper footwork, she'll get to the point of attack and get to the outside. So go ahead. You know, the one thing, and this is kind of an aside thing, you know, a lot of coaches will slap the ball to encourage the blockers to move. And I think volleyball is a visual game, so I rarely will slap the ball. I think what players have to do is they'll react just on the toss, okay? So I think it's a small deal, but I think it's an important base skill that players need to have, okay? So I'll just toss, and then she works on her motion. So toss. You know, a drill that we use quite a bit, and it encourages the blocker to take their eyes off the ball and focus on the hitter's approach and shoulders, is we'll have the coach stand on the box and move, and the blocker has to correspondingly move to line up with the shoulders. So she'll start in the middle, then I'll move quickly, and then toss the ball. Now the other thing, I'll do a couple of these so you can see. So yeah, I move. So she has to see that movement and then take a quick shuffle step, using her arms to jump, and then reach to the back line. Okay, another angle where she's just at the point of attack. She'll use her arms to jump, reach over the net, and reach to the back line. Okay, good. Okay, now go back there. Step hop. Point of attack. She uses her good footwork and then reaches to the back line with both hands. If all they see is this above the net, they should be able to manipulate the ball around that block. You know, bad hitters won't be able to do that, but the good hitters will turn it line, turn it cross court. So a couple things. One is, if Jordyn is at this position, we tell our blockers never reach away from the court. So we don't want Jordyn reaching to the antenna. It's just too easy to have the ball go off the hand, out of bounds. You reach away from the middle blocker, creating a seam. So nothing good happens when you reach away. However, we encourage the blocker, if needed, to reach back to the middle. So if I get back on the box here and Jordyn's on me, so she's fronted my initial approach, but then me being a good hitter, I'm going to try and turn and hit the ball inside of her cross court. She wants to be active with her hands up top. And by that, all we mean is, kind of extend your hands without jumping, is when she sees this move by the hitter, she should make a corresponding move with her inside hand, especially to reach cross court and take that shot away. Again, a couple things. She has to have her eyes on me, not the ball, which is a big problem with a lot of blockers. So we'll show how she reacts to that. So as a drill, I'm either going to face straight ahead and go ahead and jump and block and hit that ball, which is where my shoulders are facing, or on the toss, I'm going to turn, try to beat her across court and see if she can see that, drop her inside hand and take the cross court shot away. So notice how she sees the movement and then can reach in, still over the net, and take away the cross court shot. So the next level is going to be me. I'll do either or, and she just has to react. So it's that straight ahead. That's a shoulder turn. As mentioned earlier, swing blocking is certainly a good thing, but it has to be done well. It's just a harder skill than traditional face the net type blocking. So if you are in the situation where you have skilled athletes or a lot of time to put in on it, or both, then swing blocking is certainly a good thing. The liability of swing blocking with players that aren't good at the skill is they tend to fly through the air, making it very difficult for the defenders to line up behind them in the back row. And they over-rotate. And by over-rotate, Jordyn, why don't you start out here, means as she's in the air, she's rotating, and especially her inside hand, comes away from the net and is no longer over the net. You know, so the over-rotation part is a real problem, and that's why it's a real challenge, and this is what requires so much time, is as she crosses her feet over, as the hand's on the ball, she has her hands square to the net, her hips are square, and she's reaching to the back line. That's the timing part that takes so much practice. But here's what we see a lot in club tournaments, and you're going to intentionally over-rotate, is as the ball's being hit, you'll see how she turns away from the net. And that's not to say you'll never block a ball like she just did there. The point is you're going to block fewer balls because there's just so much twisting and torque going on with your upper body. So it's not a bad thing, it's just something that takes a lot of practice. So we'll do it again. Again, try to over-rotate here and kind of exaggerate it. So you see that move a lot. And if we were to stop in the air, what we would see is I'm hitting the ball and the blocker is in this position. So this hand might be over the net. That hand's not, and the ball will beat her a lot inside cross court. Okay, we're going to wrap up here. And I asked Jordyn, since she's hit and blocked, she's both worked on shuffle stepping, she's also worked on swing blocking, to kind of give her observations of pluses, minuses, the challenges she may have had as a blocker, or what she sees other people doing blocking-wise that would be worth mentioning. So with that clumsy introduction, Jordyn, go.
So for the past 4 years, once hitters are starting to get stronger and develop better shots, you notice a lot the blockers who have been taught to swing block typically tend to just go all the way out to the pin and just stay on the pin. And when a set's inside, the hitter just blows right past them. So, you know, I think developing a range and not just like continuously working on going all the way out to the pin all the time.
Which kind of goes back to what we talked about in terms of what your eyes are focusing on.
Right. And if you're just watching the ball or nothing and you're just going all the way out to the pin, you're going to get beat a ton of the time.
Okay. And then you also mentioned having a strong outside hand.
Right. Being a right side blocker, I've gotten beat a lot getting tooled down the line just because sometimes I forget to like press over with my right hand or use my shoulder or core to kind of shape it back into the court or to the back line. And so once I go straight over with my right hand, it makes me way more vulnerable to get tooled. And I think that's huge when you're blocking right side, especially because the outside gets set the most. And if you have a weak right side blocker, you're going to get beat.
Okay. So, I mean, those are great observations. And as we've mentioned, I guess, a couple times, there is no right or wrong. And I want coaches to be willing to experiment with both or go on a gradual scale where my core is I'm going to move along the net, keep my hips square to the net. But I'm comfortable crossing over as the situation dictates. But I don't want coaches to feel that if they're not swing blocking or crossing over that they're doing something wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the best blockers in the world never turn their hips away from the net. They're always square to the net, move efficiently along the net, and then reach to the back line, and they block a lot of balls. So work on both and give your kids a chance to get good at both, because there's situations that both are needed. But more important than, I guess, if there's a one single takeaway, get where your kids are not just standing at the net with their hands up here. You know, have them drop their hands and use their arms to jump and be a lot more athletic than what I see a lot now in terms of the blocking skill at the club level.